afternoon. This is the new Pan-African show with your host, Katsalawrk Seifu. Today, we have a fantastic guest for you that has actually traveled Ethiopia a lot. I will allow him to introduce yourself. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. I'm quite honored and privileged to be at your show. My name is Abi. The people call me in the streets in the countryside Ras Abi because I'm a Rasta man. And I what you call a tour expert for Ethiopia. But previously I was a teacher and a world traveler.
Beautiful. So we welcome you to our studio.
Thank you.
Being the son of a military father and an entrepreneur mother, describe how you grew up.
My father was a military officer, as you mentioned, and he fought against the Italians. And afterwards he was, working with the gold mines. So he was never at home. He always traveled around the country. And my mother, on the other hand, she had cows and chicken, and then she took it to the next level, where she was the first Ethiopian woman to provide eggs to Bambi's Ethiopia Hotel back in the days. It's like early 60s. So she was a hardworking woman. Strong foundation, and I've learned work ethics, the love for country, not only patriotism, but also the love for country and understanding that hard work pays off at the end. So I was blessed to have these wonderful people as my immediate gods.
Beautiful, well said. Can you describe to our viewers of this generation who might not know, what was the Red Terror? Can you tell us your experiences during the Red Terror? I mean, I know it's a hard one, so if you do want to answer that question.
Sure. I was only 13 when the revolution occurred in Ethiopia. 2 years later, our so-called politicians and intellects wanted to replicate the French Revolution in Ethiopia. So the opposition started the White Terror. And then the government and its allies did the Red Terror. What it did, it decimated a whole generation of bright Ethiopian young people who became victims of this dictatorship. So at a young age, we were exposed to executions, imprisonment. So we had to decide whether to stay or leave the country. And I believe that's why young generation of today, they don't have no one to look up to because of that, what you call extermination of the bright minds. By the hundreds, by the thousands, Ethiopian young people were killed. Most of our generation are victims of that Red Terror. So those who survived either migrated, went elsewhere, or stayed here and became victims of, mental health. So it was a dark time in Ethiopian history.
How did you end up in Djibouti? Please tell us your experience there.
I was only 17 when I finished high school, and I was blessed to have a grandfather who worked railway, the chemin de fer. A lot of people don't know what chemin de fer means. It's just a railroad. So my great-grandfather was just a laborer in the railroad, and my grandfather became Inspector General. So I was able to get a job in Dirredawa, and 3 months later, I was in Djibouti. I just walked from the border of Aisha to Djibouti. I was a lucky one because it only took me half a day. For most Ethiopians at that time who were fleeing the country, it would take them a month. So my advantage was in Djibouti, I spoke French. I went to a French school here in Ethiopia. So I went immediately to the French lycée in Djibouti. But I spent 4 instructive years. See, in Ethiopia, we are, kids at home. So we're not street smart, we're book smart. Djibouti enlightened me and trained me to be street smart.
So as you mentioned, you went to the lycée. So your high school was in Lycée Gabre Mariam. And then after you went abroad and then you came back, you were a teacher at your high school. So please describe your experience as a Francophone student in Ethiopia, as well as a teacher of Francophone culture in Ethiopia.
When you go to the lycée, you're exposed to different nationalities from different countries, mostly from Africa. That was a good beginning. We were young, we were kids, we were innocent. Coming back and going through Djibouti, I've seen that colonized countries have not benefited through education. In Djibouti, for example, they only stop at the grade of 11. There's no further education. If you go see the hospitals in Djibouti, there's no decent hospital for the locals. But the French, what they did, they had their own military hospitals and schools and everything. So coming back to Ethiopia, with my experience from the other side of the Atlantic, I couldn't accept certain ways of things in the lycée because the Western European teachers were paid 10 times more than the Ethiopians who are here, who are more qualified for the job. So it was a big disappointment. The other thing I would like to say is the French are here culturally, so they are always, taken from the arts. For example, if you go to the Alliance, if one artist want to do an exhibition, he would have to donate one of his best artwork to the Alliance in order to have his own exhibition. So many of those things I did not agree. On the other hand, you have the French Cultural Center, which is just a den for spies because they go all over the country with their NGOs and they collect information. So I became, I start to question what's the use of having all these people here who are just benefiting, I would call them lords of poverty.
So even the way they educate, obviously you've noticed that what they are educating the students, you did not really like how.
I didn't like it because, you're bombarded constantly with European history, European way of life. There's no what you call African type of teachings in these schools. These young people, they're looking up to go to Europe and America, not knowing themselves, not knowing their own country. So this is a big dilemma with our youth today, going to these private schools.
That I have to agree.
And it's not because you speak a foreign language, you're knowledgeable. Knowing and mastering a foreign language does not make you an intellect.
No, it doesn't.
So it's an advantage to know a foreign language because it breaks all barriers. You can talk to French-speaking African people. You can talk to English-speaking African people. And it's because of that I went to Haiti. Haiti's on the other side of the Atlantic. And I realized that Napoleon was not such a great guy. He fought against the Toussaint Louverture and the Salines. And when I saw how those people in Haiti fought the French Napoleon era, I realized all the stories that I was taught at school at the lycée did not match the truth and the facts. So that's why I believe that we need a very Afrocentric oriented education for our people, especially for younger generation today.
While we're on the same subject, what would you advise, especially the students that go to the private schools, that are being taught not their own history, but either it's the British or the French or the American, right? So what do you advise these students to do on their spare time?
It must come first from the parents.
Yeah.
The parents need to educate themselves about their own selves. If the parents don't know who they are and they're, like Marcus Garvey said, people without the knowledge of their own history is like a tree without roots. How do you expect these young people to follow suit? So we need to educate, re-educate parents so that they can teach them not just about Ethiopian history, not just about apartheid, but also what went on in America.
Right.
America is not such a lovely, dilly-dally place, Every day you see on the streets, black men is being killed, black women are being abused. If you go to Brazil, for example, we have a large population of African people who are neglected, abused, and killed day to day. So since Ethiopia has never been colonized, we take a lot of things for granted, especially our freedom and our independence, which came with a lot of cost. But we still do have to learn about the existence of other African people throughout the whole planet. Not just America, not just Europe, not just Africa, also in Asia. If you go to Australia, you have Aborigines, black people. You have in Indonesia today, black people are being persecuted day in, day out. So we need to have a global understanding of our race. And that's why, since we all have a common interest and a common adversary, that's why we need to come together. And that's why these young people, they need to know who they are and where they fit in this 21st century.
Lovely. So from Djibouti, you crossed the Atlantic. Now you went to the States, correct?
I went to the States, I was first in Virginia. Didn't like it because I knew it was just a sweatshop. Then I went to California, to Santa Cruz. Okay. I had a brother in the Bay Area. But Santa Cruz, I realized that all these liberal white folks were just smiling faces. So because of my stay in Djibouti for 4 years, I had plenty of time to read and dream. So my dream was to cross the Pacific, not just the Atlantic. Because if you look at the map of the world map, you see Ethiopia on one end, and then on the other end, you have a big ocean. In the middle of that ocean, you have the Hawaiian Islands. So that's why I went to Hawaii. A lot of people thought, including my brother, thought I was kind of lunatic to go there without any contact, but I managed to live there for years there.
You survived there pretty well.
More than survive.
What did you do now?
It's funny because knowing language is a big advantage. First, I worked in banana farms, macadamia nut farms, and pineapple farms.
You were just open to anything.
I was open to anything. And I was camping on the mountain. And then one day they heard me speak French and they said, we need a French teacher in the high school. So I became a French teacher and eventually I became a math teacher.
Lovely. So teaching is inside of you.
Yeah, you could say that.
Yeah, because teaching is hard. And they're high schoolers. They're not these young kids.
If you love what you're doing, if you're passionate about something, it's different. It's not a job. No. It's the way of life. So I didn't mind. I loved what I was doing because it saved me from the other jobs. But it was not enough, so I had to supplement my income. So I had to work in a 7-Eleven across the street from the school. That's how I made it in Hawaii.
And how long did you stay there?
Quite a lot.
Quite a long time. Could you please describe to our Pan-African listeners the kinds of unique experiences they can get from you?
Seeing both sides of the Atlantic, having experienced life as a black man in America, and now being an African in Africa, I have a lot of experiences especially I can focus on Ethiopia. So all the history written today about Ethiopia and Africa must be rewritten because it denies us a lot of our heritage and of our ancestors' legacy. Take, for example, Lalibela. Lalibela is rock-hewn churches, and Europeans with their pseudo-science, they think that the Knight Templars came and built it. They don't believe that African people are capable enough to do what they did. If you look up to Egypt today, because it didn't stick with them, if you read Sheikh Anta Diop, he says, the pyramids and all the Egyptian monuments were built by black people, African people. Now they came up with the pseudoscience. No, it's not African people, it's aliens now. So they are just pushing, Hollywood is pushing. Even our history in Ethiopia is written, most of the textbooks that we use in the schools is written by foreigners. We don't have our own, history books. Fortunately, Ethiopia have its own language, have its own writing, and I'm able to translate those things, those knowledge, and convey them to my fellow African brothers and sisters. And of course, there's many personal experiences. For example, living in Djibouti taught me simplicity because they're nomadic people. Since they're nomadic people, they don't really splurge on material luxury, because it's so hot out there. It doesn't matter how rich, how poor you are. Everybody's on the floor, you eat, and it's communal, A lot of people think Africa is just farmers. It's not farmers only. You have pastoral people, you have teachers, you have soldiers, you have a whole hierarchy, you have a whole society of people. And because Ethiopia never been colonized, we have pockets of regions where the people have kept their culture. And those are the jewels of Ethiopia. Even though they're minorities and they're very far away, my mission is to introduce them, to connect them with their own people. So
this one is a very interesting question, because I would never think that anybody would be out there that would actually do that. And you actually did. You translated 60 lyrics of Bob Marley into 2 languages.
correct.
What pushed you to that?
60th birthday of Bob Marley was celebrated right there in Mescal Square. And when Bob Marley's children came to the stage, whoever was on stage introducing, he was not telling exactly to the Ethiopian people who Bob Marley is. And outside, there were so-called Christian people throwing pamphlets saying, you know, he's a bad guy. Bob Marley was not just an artist, he was just a messenger. So I had to explain this to my people. And by translating Bob Marley lyrics to younger people, they start saying, wait a minute, this is the Bible, this is biblical, this is, yes, of course, what do you think it was? The reason I did it in French is also for the French-speaking countries of Africa, and also Guadeloupe and Martinique. They took hundreds and hundreds of copies over there because they know the words in English, but they didn't know the meaning in their language. So that's one of the books I did while I was in southern Ethiopian Shashamane. But there's also another book I did is Ethiopian oral literature.
Okay.
I translated that into English. Why? Because a lot of young people today have a difficulty expressing themselves in English, because Ethiopians, as you know, are introvert, they're shy. But if we teach them English using their own sayings and proverbs and parables, then they would be more confident in expressing themselves. It took 3 years. It took a long time. Yeah. Instead of teaching in one classroom, I felt that translating these books, the public would have access to these
That's
knowledge.
A beautiful idea. Can you tell us about fixing, producing, location scouting, and also about your musical career?
See, Ethiopian tourism is not well advertised abroad. So whenever there is, for example, let me give you what the French do. The French have this show called Rendezvous in an Unknown Land. And what they do, they bring a celebrity in the middle, they take them to some place. They don't tell them where they're taking them, but they make them live for 10 days with the locals. So the last one we did with the Afar people had 6 million viewers. So scouting is very important. First of all, you have to know the region. You have to know the area. Not the area frequented by the tourists, but the one that has not been frequented, that has not been visited by foreign tourists. And then you need to find authentic characters. Not people who are going to lie to you, but you know, you need to find the local people who have an authentic story to share, so that when the celebrity comes, that's where they're going to stay with them for 10 days. So they will share the day-to-day activities, whether they're farmers, whether they're pastoral people. We did one, see, a lot of people say Lalibela, but above Lalibela, there's a huge mountain called Abuna Yosef, 4,000 meters above sea level. So that's where the first time we did the film in there. And they brought one of their top model. And a few years later, she returned, because that film made her Red Cross ambassador of France, just with that film. Okay? Then they brought actors and musicians and so forth. They get free publicity, but it's up to me to find the location, to find the people, then to invite the script writer and let him study, write the scripts, and finally the crew would come. So you need to spend 2, 3 to 4 weeks in the wilderness. Scouting.
Basically.
Yeah.
Wow. Before going into the scouting, one of your passion happens to be showing off your country.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So tourism. How did you get into tourism? Because I know that being in that world actually helped you to be a good scouter, correct?
Correct. So like I told you, when I first came, I was teaching at the lycée. Then I started doing a lot of translation, interpretation work. I did, those 2 books. And I realized I don't know Ethiopia. So I started traveling on my own. I went to Bahir Dar. I thought I went as far as I could. But then that's where I realized Ethiopia is more than Bahir Dar. There's so much to see. And my knowledge of foreign languages, there was a huge opening. There was a huge opportunity because a lot of these tour guides didn't know to speak French back then. It's 15 years ago. Now we have quite a lot of dynamic people who are French tour guides and English tour guides. But when I first started, there was not many. So for me, it was a blessing in disguise. So I went to Afar and I went to the Simien Mountain. I went to Ras Dashen. I went as far as the Kenyan border. I went as far as the Sudanese border. And it became a way of life because I say to myself, my father, he went to these places in raggedy roads, no good cars. Now it's my turn now to follow suit and to know my country so that I can confidently say, I know Ethiopia. I'm an Ethiopian.
Right.
So it was a personal thing as well. And that's why I'm staying passionate. And I'd like to show what's off the road. You see, a lot of people say, okay, major destinations, Bahir Dar, Lalibela, Aksum, but they don't go outside.
Or in between.
And
there's
Ethiopia is not what's on the other, what's along the road. You have to be able to go, to penetrate.
Exactly.
And know who you people are, whether they're highlanders, whether they're lowlanders, whether they are in Afar, whether they are in Gambela. You have to know your people, what they go through on a day-to-day basis, the hardship, and then their joy. Because, for example, when you go to the Omo Valley, right after harvest, that's where the tribes dance, they chant, and they're grateful. It's not because they're not wearing clothes like us. We should undermine them. These people are really authentic, original African people, and we have so much to learn from them. That's why when you ask me what could Pan-African people can learn, we need to know our way of life of our people. How did they make it throughout the centuries?
Right.
Because Ethiopia never been colonized, and there's pockets of people who still living like it was 5,000, 10,000 years ago, there's so much to learn. And of course, in Ethiopia, every subject from archaeology, paleontology, geology, volcanology, architecture, theology, this is open lab. This is a lab. Speaking of volcanoes, in Hawaii you have volcanoes.
Right.
So one day I went to Mauna Kea and I met the astronomers, and the volcano experts, and they asked me, where you from? I said, from Ethiopia. They said, what you doing here? Real volcanoes in Ethiopia. Ertaale, Dalol. So we shouldn't take for granted what Ethiopia is for us, as well as Africa.
It has to offer.
Okay.
So you mentioned Gambela and harvest seasons. One of the things I think that we should mention is when is a good time to go to some of these places. So let's say if I wanted to catch like a good harvest season, what's a good time, like time of year?
Okay, when the rainy season comes in Ethiopia, it's June, July, August.
Correct.
It's really harvest season in the Omo Valley.
Oh, when it's rainy season here?
August, for example. Okay, that's when they harvest.
Okay.
When it's rainy season here. So, and during the rainy season here, you don't want to go to the Danakil Afar because that's when the temperatures really get too hot. Ethiopia, I tell you, is the whole world in one place. Okay, you have extreme weathers where you go to the Dalol, you are below sea level, and when you go to the Simien Mountains, you are in the highest mountains of Africa. 70% of Africa's mountains are in Ethiopia, and that's one of the reasons we've never been conquered, because whenever invaders used to come, our people used to retreat to the highlands, and whenever they regrouped and they felt good, they came down and chased the invaders. So that's why I was telling you, geography is everything. Ethiopia, you have And our geography is on a vertical. While other African countries, they are on horizontal, Ethiopian geography is vertical. It's just going up, going down, going up, going down. So it's not just the north who got mountains. You go to Bale Mountains, you have the second highest peak of Ethiopia. And then when you go further, you have a rainforest that don't exist nowhere else on the planet. Yeah, so there's so much beauty in Ethiopia.
There sure is. So you are a tour and travel expert who specializes in providing an international clientele with adventurous and immersive cultural experience in Ethiopia. Please describe to us your process and how you would, it also matters on your clientele, right? Unless they
True.
say, okay, I want to go to X, Y, and Z.
True. You see, if you go, for example, north, east, south, west for 2 nights, and you come back, that doesn't mean you know the place. But I frequently go, and I've established good relationship with the locals everywhere I go. I've made friends. I've made, with like family. So when I'm taking people with me, I try to show them what's outside the circuit. What's outside the circuit. For example, we get every 2 years, my friends from Atlanta, they have a group called Habesha group. They're from the African Americans. They raise money for a year or 2, and they bring a group of youngsters. And I take them to the northern part of Ethiopia so they can see historical Ethiopia, so they can see that Africa has steles, castles, okay, rock-hewn churches. And then I bring them again to the south, so where they can see some animals. We have the biggest crocodiles of Africa on Lake Chamo right down the road. If you go further 50 kilometers outside Addis, you have the first human settlement, which is 900,000 years old. A lot of people overlook these things, but next to Awash River, there is Malkakunture. And I always insist that people go see Malkakunture. 900,000 years ago, the first intelligent human beings used obsidian stone, to protect themselves and to hunt. So the way I explain things is I try to touch all the subjects that I mentioned to you, including geology. Why geology? Because Ethiopia is blessed with so much different type of soil. And we're like a group of people standing on a gold mine and seeking help from the outside. If we only knew what's underneath our feet. Yeah. And it's the same for all of Africa.
You say it's your mission to bring your African American and Caribbean family to Ethiopia for a much needed initiation of a tangible, spiritual reconnect with Africa.
Correct.
To what extent have you succeeded?
You see, you must understand, first of all, our people in the West are not rich. Ethiopia is one of the most expensive destinations on the planet.
Wow.
Yeah, it's very expensive. So like I explained to you early, we try to make those young people raise funds. But now I'm working nowadays with a sister from the Caribbean who have this organization, Traveling with a Purpose. So what we do, I invited the CEO of this company, and I took her around the country. And what we're trying to do is bring scholars, educators from the West, and make them have a journey, a visit to Africa with a purpose, where they can share the experiences, where they can spend some time with. Our focus is with young people, especially young boys, young girls, where they can learn coding. Okay, I will send you some of the info. I didn't mention it. This is my goal because tourism is, needs a big push in Ethiopia, and we should not only depend on the Western visitors, because whenever there's a little trouble, they turn their back on us. So we need to have a permanent flow of visitors, and the permanent flow of visitors is our African American brothers and sisters from the Caribbean, from all, from that side of the world. I have connection with my Brazilian family. I have friends in Brazil who've been coming, and what's so amazing with these Brazilians, they come before they come, they tell me, we want to be Orthodox. We want to be baptized. Brazil, what's going on? You know, and there's a large number of African people in Brazil.
Huge.
And huge. And that's why I would like to ask, you know, the African Union to have Brazil and Haiti and all the Caribbean countries as members of the African Union.
They actually just added them as the 6th member.
Wonderful,
Yeah.
wonderful, wonderful.
They just added them.
We need to bring them here, and so that they can see, you know, not just West Africa, but also East Africa. What's good about Senegal and Ghana, they have the year of return. And we in Ethiopia, we need to start a movement of that sort. I've been doing it for 10 years. So whenever these people come, I take them to a friend of mine's farm and they plant trees. We've been doing this for over 15 years.
That's beautiful.
So when they plant trees, they want to come back and see how the trees are going. Yeah. And by the time they came back, you know, when they were high school students, by the time they came back, now they are graduates, they're filmmakers, they're book writers. So I have these wonderful stories. So that's the fruit of my work. That's how I feel.
That's brilliant. I'm going to take you back to the group of students that actually come to Ethiopia. Mm-hmm. Like you said, they save and then they send these group of people, students here. I want to talk about the group of kids. What kind of students are they? Are they like average students, best students, A students, or are these the ones that are struggling that actually
Good
came
question.
here?
The ones that come, we get all kinds, but the majority are the ones the system in America have called failures.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. That's the guardians, my friends, Bingi Shan and his wife, Sister Siobhan, they focus on those kids, you know, because the system has so many cracks, they fall on the system, and it's so hard for them to get up. And once they get a number in the penitentiary, it's all over with. So before that happens, they bring them here.
Okay.
And as a drill sergeant, it's
you're
the
drill
sergeant. So we get them up early, and then we take them places, and we show them the reality here of the people and how simple life people live and how hardworking they are. And when I make sure they meet young people of Ethiopia and Africa who are dynamic, who are go-getters and ambitious, because they have lost hope on the other side. We need them to have hope so they can learn, fortify themselves, and return to Africa and be useful to the continent.
That is such a beautiful thing.
Thank you.
To know that there are actually African young brothers and sisters that actually physically come to Ethiopia or to another African country and completely change their way of thinking, their way of life, and actually end up being phenomenal people.
You see, the media have not done us justice.
No.
The media has destroyed our image, whether we're in Africa, whether we are in America. So it's up to us to build our image, so that to build self-confidence in our people, self-esteem. Yeah. That's what's lacking. So when they come and they see that Africans have built steles, castles, you know, they had civilization, language, religion, writing, music, the arts, they feel like we belong to something. Yeah. We have something. Wow. It's not just Hollywood or Hollyweird, you know. And it goes the same for our young people too. Yeah. I strongly encourage young people in Ethiopia to go outside the comfort zone, which is Langano or Awasa, whatever. They need to go outside and see what really is Ethiopia. That goes also for, you know, political, religious leaders, so that they go to all these different places and see the struggle that our people go through on a day-to-day basis, and how we can alleviate them out of poverty, how we can uplift our people. You cannot sit in Addis or in a big city in a comfortable leather chair and preach about progress.
It's not right.
It doesn't make no sense. You have to go and be with the people, and you have to know their needs. Unless you don't know these things, how can you come up with solutions? How can you come up, you know, with with solutions?
Exactly. That's a very good point.
You have to know.
That's a very good point.
That's been my main objective for me. In order to speak as an Ethiopian, I have to know all ethnic groups, all all parts of the country. Now I can confidently speak about Ethiopia.
Yeah.
And I want every African, Ethiopian, to know their continent. And once we know our country, then we know our neighbors, then we can have the network going. But if I don't know about Ethiopia, how can I go to Ghana? How could I go to Senegal and speak about Pan-Africanism? And I don't know my own.
Yeah. I mean, we don't even know our neighbors anymore.
Yeah.
Forget the others. But even just knowing one of the things that I really liked, when you're abroad and when you move from one apartment to the next, there's this thing called people bring you stuff and say, oh, hi, this is me, I'm your neighbor, I live in this.
True.
So they themselves would like to know who you are.
Who you are. Exactly.
So, but that doesn't happen here.
See, again, the education system needs to be modified because it's miseducation. It's not an education. I don't have a degree from a college or university. I'm a self-educated person because I realized even in America, they're brainwashing you. They're not educating you. See, so you have to exert yourself towards knowing your history and your future. If you know your history, then you have a destiny, you have a plan how to move forward. But if you don't know your past, how can you maintain yourself in the present and the future?
How could you move forward?
Exactly.
So being a tour guide, what is your favorite? It's really hard to say that, I know, and I shouldn't. But then again, I really would like to know if there is such a thing called a favorite spot, a favorite city, or a favorite place.
I've get this question quite often, but there's beauty in diversity.
Absolutely.
I love the Danakil Afar as much as I love the Bali Mountains, the Simeon Mountains. I love all of it. I love all part of it. The beauty about Ethiopia, like I told you, the diversity in terms of geography, in terms of the people. For example, if I take you down to the Omo Valley, every 50 kilometers, you meet a new tribe, a new language, a different culture, a different way of being. Every 50 kilometers is a surprise. So how are you going to say, this is my favorite, this is not my favorite?
You can't.
They're all
my
favorites.
I know. It was a difficult question because after I actually thought about it and put it out there, I went into myself and asked myself that question. And after, being to certain parts of Ethiopia, they're all so diverse and so different that you can't pick A from B to C. You just can't.
The common denominator is the people are loving, are smiling, and they're hospitable. I ask a lot of visitors, what did you get out of Ethiopia? He says, the children, their eyes, and the smile. What else? And they say, we see people walking. No wonder why you guys are long distance runners. Yeah, we have, I took some journalists one time, National Geographic to the Bali Mountains to do a special on the great human race. And on the road, the guy stopped. I said, what's going on? He said, all your women are beautiful. Yeah, but that's part of Ethiopia, So
part of the beauty.
There's so much beauty in the people. There's so much beauty in the culture. And there's so much beauty in the country.
That is very true. Very true. Out of all the places that you've gone, the people that you've taken in Ethiopia, the one thing that completely disappointed you and you were just saddened, it could be because of your clients, it could be because of, the places you went.
This is a very sensitive question.
It is.
My disappointment begins right here in Addis. And I've yelled and screamed about this. Now the tourism office is doing something about it, which is Ethiopia, a country with such huge history. The National Museum needs to be improved. There's not much things in it. There's few things. A if you see our competitors, the Egyptians, they spend a lot of money on their museums.
Did you just see the new one?
Yeah. Okay. I'm not competing with Egypt because Ethiopia is special. Ethiopia has so much beauty. And we have another museum which is inside the university, which is the former palace of His Imperial Majesty. All these places need restoration. And my biggest disappointment is the lack of restrooms for visitors. Why? Because most of the visitors who come to Ethiopia are above 60. And most of them are retirees. And they're going to want to use the restroom at every opportunity they get. So a nation's civilization is measured not by the amount of fancy cars they drive or fancy clothes they wear. It's the hygiene. Okay, so it starts right at home. So that's why I make sure that they go to these museums on the last day of their journey. I don't take them. I do the other way around. I mean, most tour companies, they like to show them the
city
spots. So now you have new museums. Now you have new parks. So my message to the authorities is you need to maintain the cleanliness of those toilets as you did when they first opened up. Okay, we need. Otherwise, it's a bad impression that we give about our people, about our country. It's a huge problem. Yeah.
We have a huge problem with.
Yeah, we do have a huge
wherever
problem.
we go, apparently.
Yeah.
Which I
So
always,
so the reason I give you Addis is just as a reference. Can you imagine elsewhere?
No, I don't even want to.
So let's talk about Lalibela. Lalibela, you have huge celebration for Christmas because it's his King Lalibela's birthday. Thousands and thousands of pilgrims flock, and money that was allocated to build toilets has been misused and robbed by so-called, administrators and politicians. And we are not doing justice to Lalibela because we do need to tourism will grow. It's a business that will grow, but we need to grow too.
Absolutely.
We do need to grow with the business. And it's not just the responsibility of the government, it's also the responsibility of the private sector. Once we do this, then, we could say we're not embarrassed to bring people to Ethiopia.
Yeah.
These are taboo subjects. Nobody want to talk about it, but I'm always throwing this because
it's good.
It's crucial. It's crucial.
We have to talk about the things that we don't talk about.
Yeah. Outside Addis, I don't care. I can take them out in the countryside. I'm more relaxed. But in Addis, the capital of Africa, come on. So lately, since COVID, I think the message has gone to the authorities, and now they're doing a big restoration and renovation of the museums and, the Unity Park and Afreeqa Park. But that need to be maintained.
Why are we having, this is like offering jobs to several women, or even men for that matter, to be able to maintain it on a regular basis. I don't think somebody should come every week. They should have one person every day.
I want to take it to the next level. I want to take it to all elementary, secondary schools and universities. Because we do need to educate each and every one. Not just, we're not doing this just for our visitors. We need to do it for our people.
For all of us. Yeah.
For all of us. COVID was a blessing in disguise because when COVID came, people started washing their hands, started keeping clean. And a lot of my doctor friends, they told me, there was less typhus, typhoid, all these things were eliminated. So, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to figure this out. So we do, and that's what I do when I go outside the city in the countryside. I always go check for the toilets. And I bring the teachers and I tell them, here's some bleach. What's the use of you having a fancy classroom if you do not teach your kids, have a clean toilet? So that's
or even have to use one.
Yeah.
Well, that's lovely. Well, we've come to the end of our lovely conversation. If there's anything else that you want to add, I'll give you the last word.
I encourage young people to pursue their education in the subjects of geology, architecture, archaeology, you name it, because we have it right here. It's all here. The studies of ethnic studies. I mean, you have Europeans and foreigners coming to Ethiopia, and I'm taking them to study my people. But there's not one Ethiopian or African come to study my people. I get really disappointed sometimes. So everything is here. We just need to rebrand ourselves, when I mean not rebrand, but program ourselves, deprogram ourselves, and reprogram ourselves with consciousness, and to raise the awareness with young people. Listen, everything is here. You need to study these things here instead of bookkeeping and accounting. When you ask a lot of young people, everybody want to be a business administrator. Everybody want to be an accountant. And who going to do the other research? Are we going to let, foreigners come and study us and learn about us? That's my message to young folks today.
Well, I hope you young folks have heard what he had to say. We thank you for tuning in. This is your show, Afreeqa, with our guest, Abit Alahun. See you next week.